Hey everybody, if you're struggling, there is help. You can call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255.
Welcome to Better Humanhood, where we build a better world by building better people. We have to live on the planet, and we have to live with other people. We have conversations about making that a wonderful proposition.
Hey, I hope you're listening to the JKWD podcast. It comes out on Monday. I do it with my friend Kelvin Ringgold. I guess before we start that, I should say, hey, welcome back to Better Humanhood. I'm your host, Josh Shear. You know me. You've been around here for a while. I've been around here for a while. We're friends, right? Hope you're having a great day, great hour, great moment, as it were. As I said, I hope you're listening to JKWD. It's a show that Kelvin and I do. You probably hear Marlena and Java on there fairly regularly at this point, since they are around, and we usually talk for a long time, and then, the episodes run generally between 30 and 60 minutes, depending on whether we have a guest. And this week we had as our guest Frank King, the mental health comedian. Now, it actually ended up being an interesting time to have Frank on as well. The show came out just this week. It came out on the 2nd of March. We talked about a week and a half before then, and as we were setting it up, we were trying to find a time. We usually, Kelvin and I, we generally meet on Friday mornings, and so we just try to schedule people for that time rather than trying to arrange 3 people for some other time and make that work. So we were setting it up, and he said, well, I got to fly out to Asia, get on a cruise ship. At this point, we haven't heard much about coronavirus yet. And when it came time for our chat, I did what I usually do. I emailed him a few days before. I said, hey, here's the meeting info. We'll see you then. And, I made some offhand comment about, hey, I hope you weren't on one of those quarantine ships. And I didn't hear from him. And sometimes that happens. It's usually with younger folks. You just say, hey, I'm going to be there. You tell them where to be, and they show up. They don't confirm that they're going to be there. Frank is not a younger fella. He mentions in our conversation that he's 63. So I'm not. I'm not blowing his age up. So that's usually we'd hear something from him, and we hadn't. By about 20 minutes before we were going to meet him. So I did a quick Google search. It turns out that he wasn't on a quarantine ship, but he was on a ship that was sailing not far from a quarantine ship, and there was news going around that he was on a quarantine ship and that he had jumped quarantine, which turns out wasn't true. But you know how sometimes one media outlet will say something and nobody will confirm it. They'll just assume that media outlet confirmed it. And so this incorrect news story floated around the web. And man, he got destroyed online. One of the things we talked about in the episode was bullying. And he says, I had to have online bullying explained to me. I always figured it couldn't be worse than I got in the locker room in high school. And the thing is that when you're getting into high school, it goes away when you go home. But online, it doesn't. It's still there. And so if you're being bullied on Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever, you go home and your bullies are still there, beating you down. And he got death threats, and he had to have Google take his business page down because, he's a speaker. His business address is his home. So he had to take that down, and it was crazy. So I want to talk just briefly. I wanted to touch on that distinction between online and in real life bullying, IRL bullying. Because if you hear about it and you remember bullying from school and you're older than, 25, really, right? It's only been the last 12, 13 years that we've had, I guess, older than 30. It's only been the last 12, 13 years that we've had Facebook out to the general public. Seems like not that long, right? But yeah, it's been a while. But before that, once you were home from school for the day, you're good. And now it's a perpetual beatdown. And it's terrible because it's one thing to feel like, oh yeah, we should all be nicer to one another. It's another thing to actively push for harm. We can definitely be better than that as a species. Other thing I wanted to talk about is a reminder to folks in the media, my colleagues, do your homework. It's not that hard. I know we've taken out a layer of editing, sometimes two. We've got a 24-hour news cycle. There's more pressure. But get the story right. Like, seriously, you're hurting people badly. As long as I've got your attention, coronavirus. It's not a joke. I mean, there are people getting sick. There are people dying. But I feel like we're getting a lot of misdirection. The U.S. is not prepared. We don't have good tests yet. They're not widespread yet. You want to get ahead of this thing instead of reacting to it, and we are reactionary to everything. I heard somebody talking on a podcast last week. It was a deep background podcast. I'll see if I can find a link to that for the show notes for this episode. They said in an average flu pandemic, 30 to 40% of adults in the world will be infected. Most will be asymptomatic. They won't get a fever. They won't be sneezing and coughing. Be about the same or more with this. They predicted that somewhere between 40 and 70% of the adults on the planet, as this thing makes the rounds, it's not going to happen in the next month or two. It's going to happen over the course of a year, 18 months, whatever. Somewhere between 40 and 70% of adults on Earth will have the coronavirus, will have this new coronavirus. A coronavirus, by the way, is a family of viruses, or coronaviruses are a family of viruses that cause diseases like SARS and the common cold. And this is a new coronavirus that's causing the current disease that they're calling COVID-19. That's coronavirus ID 19, or coronavirus disease 19, because it was first found in 2019. Okay, so that's that. So a lot of people are going to get it. People who are going to die from it are susceptible populations, just like people who die from the flu. It's going to be young kids and elderly folks and people with generally compromised immune systems. Does that mean you shouldn't worry about it if you're healthy? No, because you come in contact with other people. You probably don't live in a bubble. If you live in a bubble, you don't have to worry about this thing because you're not getting it communicated to you, which means you're not communicating it to anybody else. Do you need masks? Do you need gloves? No, but wash your hands. If you're coughing, wash your hands. If you shake somebody's hand, wash your hands. Wash your hands before you eat anyway, but definitely do it now. Like, it's got an incubation period. People don't know they're sick for 10 days. And like I said, most people are going to be asymptomatic. They're going to have this virus, and they're not going to know they have it because they don't show any symptoms, and they're fine, but they pass it along. And if they pass it along to the wrong person, they're not fine. Now, let's do a little scaring, just because I think it's important to note. A lot of people who are going to pass this along are working in service industries. They don't have health coverage. They don't have sick days. If they do have health coverage, it's very expensive for them to go to the doctor anyway. For a well visit, never mind for a sick visit. And besides, they lose a day's pay if they take time off. And if they find out that they've got this thing, then they're going to be told to stay home from work, and that's more days missed. So, you know what people are going to do? They're going to go to work and they're going to cough. And then they're going to handle money and pass it back and forth. Money's already one of the most dirty things we have, by the way. Can you hear the dog snoring? Anyway, you know, doing the grocery deliver thing, not going to help you if the people doing the personal shopping are the people who can't take a day off because they don't have sick pay. If they're in there picking out your vegetables and your meats with coronavirus-y hands, welp, staying in didn't help you. People working in fast food restaurants don't have sick pay. They miss a couple of days, they're going to get fired. They're going to come coughing, sniffling, whatever. They're going to be at work. That's why we need the regulations for people like that, for the working conditions. It's not only about getting a better life for people, it's about spreading illness, particularly if they're asymptomatic. I mean, healthy 19-year-old may not show signs, but they might be flipping your burgers. It's a lot of burgers. It's a lot of people getting sick from somebody who didn't know they were sick. And even if they did know they were sick, they wouldn't take a day off because they can't afford it. So think about that. Next time you're complaining about people who might want a bit higher wage or who might want better health coverage, either mandated for employers or from the government itself. It's worth it in a case like this. You look at France, you look at Italy, we're not at this point in the U.S. We've got 2 deaths as I'm recording this early morning on March 3rd for release on the 5th, 2020. But man, we are not safe necessarily. Just a little happy thought for your Thursday. Anyway, be who you are. Be who you will to be. We will see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Get show notes and more at betterhumanhood.com. Leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And have yourself a wonderful day.